So in last week's episode about writing your novel fast, I got a few really great questions about how do you know what to include and what not to include in a first draft. I want to say right up front that there's no clear-cut answer to this, at least not in this video. I can't tell you to leave out certain setting details or skimp on dialogue or anything like that, but I do have an answer for you. And if you've never written a first draft before, if this is your first draft, then by the end of this episode, you're going to know everything you need to know to write that draft fast and keep that match, that flame, that love for your idea burning inside you the whole time. Not only that, but I've got a freebie for you to download that's going to help you prep for writing your first draft and make sure you stay motivated all the way through, so be sure to stick around for that. So let's start with the age-old question. Are you a plotter or a pantser? Man, I have been asked that question on probably every panel, festival, conference, whatever book event I've ever attended. And don't get me wrong, I love talking about process. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you probably know that I'm a plotter. But I kind of think that this question is the source of grief for a lot of authors, even if we don't realize it. And that's especially true if you've never written a book before. So you've no doubt heard authors talk about what kind of plotting process they use if they're plotters, like Save the Cat or the snowflake method, whether they do scene-by-scene outlines or more just like a brief synopsis that follows a general 3-act structure. A term I've been hearing more and more lately is zero draft, or maybe draft zero, which from what I understand is kind of like a free write synopsis with as much or as little detail as you want. You're just kind of letting the story pour out of your brain in whatever form it happens to come in. So you have a really messy summary to work with when you start your first draft. All of these methods are great and valid, and whatever works for you, works for you. But I was talking to my friend Lindsay about this week. We've actually co-authored a novel together, and I'm a plotter while she is definitely a pantser, so this is a conversation we've had a lot in the past. She's actually finishing up a draft of a book right now, and to my shock, she outlined it. Or maybe she zero drafted it. She wasn't quite sure what the thing she did was. And she was like, where's the line anyway between a zero draft and a synopsis or an outline? And I was like, you know, I don't know. Maybe I should look that up. This is an interesting topic to talk about. Then she made a joke about how plotter versus pantser wasn't a real binary and her gender was pantser questioning, and at first that just really made me laugh. And then I thought, oh my god, no, that's true. I was literally about to Google this. What's the difference between a zero draft and an outline? And guys, these are all just variations on finding story structure. Different ways of finding story beats with varying levels of detail. That's it. There's no line. The binary doesn't exist. And here's the other thing. While I'm sure there are authors out there who find this one process and it works for them every time on every book they write, and that's great, for me, that's not the case. And I think that's true for a lot of authors. The reason I'm so obsessed with reading about and finding new and different plotting and outlining methods is because I've never used the same one for the same book. With every idea that comes to me or with every project I take on, I tackle it in a slightly different way. I mean, I've taken on ghostwriting and IP projects where someone hands me a premise and I've developed it with snowflake method, but other times I've just done a 3-act structure. I've used Hero's Journey to revise a first draft that had a huge 2nd-act problem. A few months ago, I used Save the Cat and whipped out a first draft of a book I really love, but a few years ago I tried Save the Cat and it literally made me lose the plot of that book. And really, if you think about it, this makes sense because every book, every idea that you get and that I get is different. So why would the same method work every time? I get that this is probably really overwhelming if you've never written a book before. I mean, how are you supposed to know which way is going to work for you if you've never tried any of them, right? Well, here's the good news. There's no one right way. There's just your way. So really, the first time, you can't go wrong. All right, I promise I'm coming back around to these questions. What do you include in a first draft and what do you leave out for revisions? I'm getting there. I said this in last week's video, but I think it really bears repeating. You can edit for anything but lack of passion. If your love for this story, for this idea dies, that's the one thing revisions can't fix. Lacking voice? Yes, you can fix that. Lackluster world building, awkward prose, flat character arcs, all of that is fixable. So here's the answer to what you include in your first draft. Your strengths. Okay, but again, Michelle, how do I know my strengths if I've never done this before? That's easy. Your strengths are your passions. And I'm going to help you find your strengths right now. So get out a pen and a piece of paper or your phone or just anything that you can write on. Really, go do it. Get something to write on right now. We're gonna do this. It's really easy and it won't hurt a bit. I'm gonna ask you 4 questions and don't think about them too hard. Just write down whatever comes to mind, okay? Here we go. Question 1. Describe your novel in 1 word. 1 word? I know. Look, this is not a pitch. This is not for anyone but you. I know 1 word just popped into your mind. It could be an emotion, it could be a character's name, it could be a place, it could be an object, it could be something that seems totally random even to you, and you don't know how it ties into your novel, but it popped up in your brain, so it does in some way. Write that 1 word down. Question 2, what are you most excited about writing in this first draft? Once again, there is no wrong answer here. This could be a specific scene. It might be a big argument between 2 characters. It might be something small, like a joke the main character's best friend makes. It might be a first kiss. It might be a death. It might be even just 1 specific line of prose that you thought of early on when you got this idea. And every time you think of it, you give yourself chills. Whatever it is, write it down. Number 3, what are you least excited to write in this draft? Or another way to phrase this might be, what are you most afraid of writing in this draft? Be honest, and no shame here. It could be setting descriptions. Maybe it's the first chapter because you don't know how the story starts yet. Maybe it's the last chapter because you have no idea what's going to happen. Maybe it's dialogue because you're not sure how to really do that well yet. Or maybe it's fight or action scenes. Or maybe it's big, deep emotional revelations. Again, there's no shame here. Those are all totally normal things to feel intimidated by and to dread writing. So write them down. Question number 4, this is the fun one. What does your dream book cover look like? Is it illustrated or is it a photograph? Is it abstract or is it a character or is it a place? Does the title dominate the page or is it really more image focused? Whatever it is, describe it and spare no detail. Pause this video if you gotta and finish that up. Now, take a look at those 4 answers. This is going to reveal a lot to you about what excites you the most and what intimidates you the most. Now, for simplicity's sake, let's break down the elements of your first draft into 5 areas: theme, voice, plot, character arcs, and world building. All 5 of these things need to be strong in your final draft, but this is your first draft. And no one in the history of ever has written a first draft with all 5 of those elements perfectly, beautifully, flawlessly, effortlessly in place. No one. So, using your answers to those 4 questions as a guide, I want you to list those 5 elements in order of best to worst or strongest to weakest, depending on how you want to look at it. Start with the element that's going to be your strength and end with the one that you feel is going to be your weakest. This is your list of priorities for your first draft. This is your key to finding your writing process before you even start. And what's even better, this process is going to help you keep that match lit because you're only going to focus on the things you're most excited about in your first draft, and all that stuff that you're dreading, whatever, you're gonna fix it later. So if plot's at the bottom of your list and character is at the top, then skip the outline and just write your draft and go wherever your protagonist takes you. If world building's at the top and voice is at the very bottom, then roll around in all those lengthy setting descriptions and drop in all the backstory you want, and don't worry about sitting there struggling to find the right turns of phrase. In your first draft, skimp on what you don't like and revel in what you love. That is how you keep the match lit from beginning to end. So seriously, don't worry about the things that are your weaknesses. All writers have weaknesses, and that's why all writers have to revise all books. And here's the thing, the process of writing your first draft is going to teach you more about writing than any video or blog post or book or whatever ever could. You are going to be a significantly better, more experienced writer by the time you finish. And that future you is going to be ready to fix all that low priority stuff when it's time to revise. If this is all really clicking for you and you want to dig a little deeper, then check the description for a link to grab your free Your First Draft checklist. It's got those 4 questions plus a few extra questions to help you really figure out what excites you most about this draft and what you fear most about this draft, to help you list your priorities as you write. And there is a really fun little bonus project that you can do as you write your first draft that's going to help you stay motivated, focused, and really excited about the idea and give you a little head start on your revisions. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about this or want to see me cover any other topics in this series, I really love reading the comments and I will add all of your questions to my list. So go ahead and hit me up in the comments below. If you found this helpful, of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications every time I post a new video, and I will see you next week.